Kevin, what a fantastic job at the World Heritage or the World Economic Forum. Can you tell me what the reaction was in the room?
Yeah, Glenn, great to be with you. So it was of course such a lion's den, but from the stage, I'm looking out obviously at the room, and the best reaction, at least from my vantage point, was when I talked about the problem of China. And I said, look, you guys not only don't recognize the Chinese Communist Party as the number one adversary to free people on the planet, you actually gave them a platform. And you had CCP officials talking here. Well, this one guy in the front row, Glenn, European dude with skinny jeans, just had a meltdown. I mean, he literally almost fell out of his chair. And so it was almost so distracting, I lost my train of thought. But then, this is the second of two great reactions. I moved on to my point about climate change and how climate alarmism has become the number one cause for mental health crisis around the world, which, by the way, I kind of made up on the spot, but I also
I think it's true. Yeah.
And especially among younger people. Yeah. And like the back 2/3 of the room, every person in that seat looked at me like I had just landed from Mars. And that's when I realized, I'm doing what I told Glenn I would do, which is tell the truth.
Yeah. It's amazing that, you got out of there. Good thing you weren't on any rooftop restaurants. But anyway, when you were there, and this is something I thought of recently, that their goal was to rebuild trust. And I think I'm seeing this differently. They don't care about our trust. They care about the trust among the elites, because some of the elites are starting to say, I don't know, maybe we should slow down. People are starting to rise up against us. And it's a huge election year, biggest in global history. And they're saying, basically, I think, stick together, trust the plan, and it'll all be fine. Do you think that's out in space, or is that right?
No, I think you're entirely right. In fact, I wasn't exactly sure what they meant as I was going over there about rebuilding trust. I knew what I was going to say. But after reflecting on it and having some conversations while on the ground, I realized that's what they mean by rebuilding trust. Trust the plan. And where that began to kind of crystallize in my mind was when Jamie Dimon did that interview on CNBC. And he said, look, we shouldn't talk so ill of MAGA people. And, some people celebrated that. Well, that's just part of the ruse, right? It's an attempt to draw us in. And I know that was their agenda in inviting me, which was to say, let's get this guy who leads this conservative think tank, which is respected on the center right. Folks on the left, don't like heritage with good reason, but we disagree. And let's see if we can get him to come here and say, let's work toward rebuilding trust. And then they could have twisted that to say, heritage is saying, let's trust the plan. Obviously, I think I succeeded in blowing that up. But let me just tell you,
I think you.
Just quick point.
Yeah, I think you did.
They were shocked that I came on so strong, because they expected me to sort of salute, maybe make some mildly critical comments and move on.
So yesterday we found out, or a couple of days ago, about the Amazon files, where the White House was literally telling Amazon to ban books and suppress books so people couldn't find them. Today, the Post is reporting on a White House project. It's an AI project known as Track F. And some of the emails that have now been exposed, that scientists going back and forth on this project, funded by the White House, that say Americans can't tell fact from fiction online, and that conservatives and veterans are even more susceptible than the public at large. So I guess we know what this AI system will do once it is developed by the White House and then given to social media platforms.
Yeah, this is the mechanism to bring us fully into George Orwell's world, right? You remember being in school and reading that book? I remember telling my 1984 and telling my teacher, I said, this is laughable. I mean, it's a good book, but this will never happen. Oh my gosh. It's happening. It's even worse, actually. But to this point about AI, it isn't just because I am a traditional conservative and therefore very not trusting of new technological developments that I've cautioned against AI but particularly in the hands of government and especially in the hands of this administration, we need to realize this isn't some annoyance. This is something that's directly aimed at you and me and your audience, and we have to stop it in its tracks before it gets a wider implementation.
Yeah, but how do we wake more people up to this? I mean, it is so clear. If people would just look at the news and divorce themselves from political parties, it is so clear what is coming our way quickly. How do we wake more people up?
Well, it sounds trite, maybe even patronizing, because I'm going to include the importance of your show. But you know that I mean that genuinely, because I am just I'm a working class dude who wears a suit in D.C. each day. People listen to your show. Some of them follow Heritage. There are many other great shows and organizations. The point is, pointing to something that happened yesterday, we collectively, the big royal we, killed the border non-security part of that bill. And what I have been saying for the last 24 hours, Glenn, to friends around the country is, guys, this is an example of the good things that happen when we wake up. But what we have to avoid doing in this case, because it's so typical of conservatives, in the rare times we get a policy win, we then pat ourselves on the back, but more importantly, we go back to important things to us, like friends and family and business.
Uh-huh.
We have to stay engaged.
Yes.
And we have to have a great skepticism against this usage of AI by the government.
So we have a chance to get rid of McConnell. I don't know how you feel about McConnell, but I think he's got to go. And that the power of the head of the Senate to be able to have all the purse strings for the GOP senators is crazy. But is there a chance that McConnell is gone because of this? And if so, who should replace him, or who do you think will?
Yeah, there is a chance, and just so you and your audience know, Mitch McConnell and I guess, we're on like professional speaking terms, but I've been saying publicly that it was time for him to go. I do wish him a long and healthy and relaxing retirement on the personal side, but politically, he's the icon of everything that's wrong in Washington, because what's wrong in Washington, and it's connected to the World Economic Forum, as you know, is that these people decide, just a handful of people, they're going to tell us what's best for us, and they demand that we eat it. And so I'll tell you a real quick story. A couple of Decembers ago, I was invited to the Senate steering lunch by our mutual friend, Senator Mike Lee. And it was to explain why it was a bad idea, once again, to spend the people's money in one of these end-of-year omnibus bills, because there isn't accountability of the money. We're spending money we don't have. He gave me a death glare. Afterwards, to his credit, he was willing to speak to me. He said, Kevin, I don't understand the disconnect between what we're trying to do and Heritage's opposition. And I said, Senator McConnell, it just shows, I said, I actually don't mean this as sarcastically as it sounds. It just shows how much of a bubble you and your leadership team live in. So I actually think this defeat yesterday of this bill shows that there is, politically speaking, blood in the water, that his leadership is really weakened. And I believe sometime this year, maybe sooner than later, there will be an announcement that he's retiring. And thankfully, as you know, there are a number of good potential replacements who would fix the problem.
It would be great. It would be great. Let me talk to you kind of on this in the same realm here of constantly coming under attack. Our freedom of speech and everything else. They have gone off after this president, and we've been saying, look, if they'll do it to the president, they'll do it to you. Then they go after Elon Musk. They are bound and determined to get him out as well. If they're doing it to the richest man in the world, they'll do it to you. Now, yesterday, we were talking on the air about groups that are suing the effective attorney generals, all of them Republicans, filing ethics complaints against them, and then also targeting any attorney that files anything to push back on this administration. We are losing the good attorneys, and I know I personally have lost the best firm on freedom of speech because of who I am. I had them for years, and now, no, because they have Google and everybody else, and I think they received all kinds of heat. We're losing the ability to have good attorneys. Is anyone thinking about a conservative firm or a fund that we could all fund to hire the best attorneys that are free of the WEF swamp kind of stuff.
Let me just underscore what a massive problem this is. The example that you used regarding yourself, the example of these people attacking these effective attorneys general because they're standing up to the administrative state. And we at Heritage encounter that same problem, but especially as we develop this presidential transition project we've discussed, Project 2025. On that point, we've had a difficult time getting attorneys to participate and also say that they can be named publicly. So it speaks to the reality that there's been not just there's been a chilling effect on this, but to the solution, which, I'd like to spend my time on the solution. So there are a couple of newer boutique firms, so smaller law firms that are composed of conservatives here in D.C. Heritage and some other conservative groups are able to use them. But the key thing, Glenn, is that we also have to get control over at least a few of the law schools. Because what concerns me is not just the difficulty of the present situation,
yes,
but the difficulty that the same kind of thing has happened in law schools where very bright, objective, but conservatively minded law students have to remain silent, and their ability to move up the ladder from law school to clerkships to professional work full time is really endangered. So like so many things in America, it goes back to institutions. We have to be able to either start or reclaim some of those law schools. Otherwise, this is going to be a generation-long problem that only gets worse.
Well, let us know if you come across anything that can help, because I think this audience understands what we're facing. I mean, they're using the criminal. Whether they get a conviction or not, they're using the criminal justice system now, and they're going to. They already are using it against the average person. If you're pro-life or whatever, and if you can't get a good attorney, you're toast. If you're, God forbid, you're tried in the District of Columbia or New York.
You're totally toast. And I should have mentioned, too, because you referenced it, this question, in addition to these problems we've discussed, sort of a legal defense fund. And we have started building that for people we've solicited to be part of Project 2025, because what we were hearing from them, to your point about the lack of representation, is, Kevin, I'm willing to go into the next administration and work in an area of competence, professional competence, but I'm likely to get sued, and including on the personal side, in addition to my professional duties. And so, although it's in the preliminary stage, we've put this together. Sometime in the near future, I'll send you a note and let you know when we can share more details. But I mentioned that today, even though it's preliminary, Glenn, to give people hope that the conservative movement isn't just asking people to pick up where they live for a couple years or 4 years and come serve in the next administration. But we also have to remember that we have to have one another's backs. It's one of the big missing pieces of this movement. And I'm really gratified that some smart people you and I both know are part of this effort to defend our friends.
Kevin Roberts, Heritage Foundation president. Love to have you back to talk about Project 2025 if we can help on that at all, because I think it's inspiring. It'll give people hope. Thank you so much, Kevin.
It should. God bless you, my friend. Take care.
God bless you. You bet.